Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Unprofessional Look, why DIY content is the weak link, presented by Shannon Baker and Peter Richardson. This webinar is brought to you by today's sponsor, Spectrio. Before I hand the presentation over to today's sponsors, there are a couple of housekeeping items that I must address. First, for the CTS holders among you viewing our presentation live, today's webinar qualifies for a half renewal unit for the CTS and for the CTSD, but none for the CTSI. Please allow up to 7 business days for those to appear on your transcripts. If you have any issues, please email the webinar team directly at webinars@avixa.org. Today's webinar should last between 45 and 60 minutes, and all attendees have been placed on mute. If you have any questions during our Q&A, please enter them into the Q&A window so that today's moderators can address them at their discretion towards the end of the presentation. To access this Q&A window, move your cursor towards the live stream video box, locate the Q&A icon, and type away. Just please be mindful that there is a separate menu for the chat and to not put your questions in the chat as they will not be recorded. You will have access to our presentation at avixa.org/webinars within about 5 to 7 business days. And that's all from AVIXA for now. And on to our presentation. Take it away, Spectrio.
Great. Thank you. Let's see. Are we live and share? There you go. Everyone, good afternoon. My name is Pete Richardson, Vice President of Sales. Joined with Shannon Baker.
Hi, I'm Shannon Baker. I'm the Senior Director of Creative Production here at Spectrio.
So I think we're going to get into this a little bit. We're going to talk about do-it-yourself content and things like that. I'm relatively new to Spectrio, so I've been about 15 plus years in Pro AV. A lot of that time, or almost all of that time, was at one of our our current OEM partners, and really looking forward to joining with the rest of you today and talking about this pretty interesting topic. So we'll just jump right in. Who is Spectrio? Who are we? We are a large company that handles a lot of customer engagement, a lot of things you may know, digital signage, CMS. We are a CMS provider, 150,000 locations, Fortune 500 to mid-market to single SMBs. What we really do, and we're going to talk about, is some of the differentiation that we can drive with our creative team. But some of the things that you don't know, we have things like Wi-Fi marketing, overhead music, on-hold marketing, even scent marketing. I didn't even know what that was when I joined. So our portfolio is really broad and can really amplify and help what you're doing, some of the solutions for your or our mutual customers. But back to CMS and why we're here. I really think that our creative team, our creative capabilities are the differentiator. And that is what sets us apart. And that's really what Shannon's going to talk about.
Absolutely. Here at Spectrio, we have a massive creative team. I myself have been here for 18 years doing digital signage, started as a designer, and now we have a multidisciplinary department of writers, audio engineers, producers, editors, designers, animators, strategists, with a wide pool of voice talent and a national network of videographers that enables us to go to site for our customers across our entire nation, to quickly develop content for them, both for digital signage and beyond. We really act as an extension of our customers' marketing team, partnering with them and collaborating on solutions and strategy to move and further their business goals into the future. We provide content strategy services, design services, video production and animation, audio production, covering all of the services that Pete mentioned here a second ago, including waiting area signage, back of house signage, menu boards, video walls, interactive screens, you name it. We're in those solutions and we're help pushing and driving business goals forward. It's really exciting. So think about marketing and content that goes and fills out the entire site, but goes well beyond the physical location as well.
Yeah, some of those things, between the visual and the overhead and the audio, the voice talent, you can really put together a complete solution with what the creative team can deliver.
Sorry, I had to mute myself to cough.
No
That type of
worries.
thing. And why should you listen to us, right? We've been in the game for a while, right? And not just making content, but making great content, award-winning content. We've been making waves and doing this, as I mentioned, for a long time, and we've got the trophy case to prove it. But this is recognition not just for us, but it's also for our partners and for our customers to celebrate the fruits of all of that collaborative labor that we embark on together. Pictured here, we've got some of our 2025 wins to date shared here with you, and also a little representation of some of
Yeah.
the awards that we've won over the years.
That's a lot of hardware. As the kids say, bringing the receipts.
Yep.
So we don't just do creative, we do it really well.
So, we're here to talk about what is the unprofessional look and why DIY content is the weak link. And Pete, I really wanted to ask you, with your experience and your background working with all these partners and customers in the space, what is and what are some of the most frequent questions that you get asked by customers interested in
Well,
digital signage?
well, I mean, it's a tough one when you're at the end user, and especially when they're going from static to digital, it's their first encounter with digital. It's education. Why? Why is it so expensive? Why can't I just buy a consumer TV or hang up a TV? I'll tell you, I even cringe when if someone says TV, I kind of cringe. And use a thumb drive or just put up a PDF or a PowerPoint. And we really walk them through in my life, and I think probably all of you on here, we walk them through the benefits of what commercial grade hardware means, what professional installation it does just for their experience and also their brand. It opens up the when you get past that, or if you're talking to someone who's already engaged in digital signage, the conversation really gets good when they start talking about, and this is kind of a buzzword, but outcomes. How do they drive engagement? How do they increase sales or close rates? And I think you have to also be conscious of a brand. And brand equity is really important. So do it yourself. Do it yourself hardware. We know you've all fixed problems when people have done it. I think that's where we really start to see a great engagement and a great conversation.
Yeah, and I know, you start having these conversations and you start, ideating about what this ideal state is, but you start running into some challenges. What are some of the challenges that you've seen either with, big or some complicated kind of implementations?
Well, I've seen, such a laser focus on the tech, not to say, listen, this is why we're here together. We do what we do, you do what you do. And Shannon, you do what we do. But I think what a lot of people focus on is, getting the hardware, the specs, the look and the feel of the tech. A lot of this is complicated, custom form factors, in micro LED, and we talk about big signage, we talk about complex shapes, you talk about curve, convex, concave curving and things like that. But ultimately, the tech, no matter what it is, how bright it is, how beautiful it is, it's the canvas. We really want to focus on closing the gap between what you do, delivering that content, which is what we do in the CMS side, and making sure we're really delivering on what that customer needs via content. So I think those are really what I've seen.
Yeah,
So,
it's really easy to focus on the hardware and installation costs at the end of the day, but those hidden costs of not implementing a well thought out content strategy can really invalidate that investment over time.
yeah, they're not able to realize ROI. They look at it, and if they put up bad content, they're going to get bad results.
Every time.
So okay, I kind of teed up my own question. Why does it matter? Why does content matter?
That's a great question. So we're talking about professional content, and we all might immediately think of the thing that we see on the screen, but it's more than what we see on the screen, and it's more than how it looks or how well made that one thing is. It's a plan driven by strategy. It's expertly designed and developed with the intention of achieving a desired goal. It's making a connection and influencing a behavior with your customers or your viewers or your audience. It's tying those business objectives and desired outcomes to an overarching strategy that includes the planning, the workflow, the process, the deployment, the scaling, the getting it on the screen. It's optimized to increase efficiency, to reduce stress or burden on people on site, because that's a really big one we don't talk about a lot. So, solutions that are built to adapt for every need and meet audiences where there are. Professional content can do all of these things.
Yeah, I mean, it pulls in the customers, but at the end of the day, we got to measure conversion rates. We've got to see what ROI is, and content. A lot of us, we talk to different people in these engagements, and they need to be relevant to the CFO. You've got chief revenue officer, chief financial officer, not just the marketing officer. So when branding translates into revenue and increased revenue and content drives that, I think you've got a win-win when you talk about your customers. So that leads to kind of a question. What are some of the costs, the hidden costs? Because it's not a line item, it's not a pencil sell all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Unprofessional content, at the end of the day, it undermines that digital signage investment, which we know we're talking about screens, we're talking about hardware, we're talking about moving electrical, we're talking about all these things, which can be overwhelming. But all of that investment is completely undermined and it is completely undermined with unprofessional content. And you also devalue your brand, which, what is a brand, right? Is it your logos? Is it your colors? Is it making sure that the logo is a certain size and that the type is the right font? It's far more than that. A brand, any expert will tell you, it's how people feel about you. It's how viewers perceive your brand and how you make them feel. It's the experience that they have. And professional content and strategy expertly crafts the audience perception and experience, enhancing your brand, enhancing that feeling and that perception of who you are and how you fit into the marketplace. That works hand in hand to captivate viewers and influence desired behaviors, creating that engagement. Think about marketing dollars that are already in play. People are spending money on OTT streaming, they're spending money on web ads, social media ads, all with an intent and a purpose and a plan to do what? What is the goal? To drive people to sites, to websites, to physical locations? How much care, intention, investment is put into those campaigns and that effort? Now, when you drive customers to your physical location, you still have a conversion to make. They still have to do something once they're there. Once they're
Yeah.
on site, is that same attention and purpose-driven focus applied to your audience touch points there? Like that's the big question here. Why spend all these dollars in digital spaces establishing a set of expectations and then drive people to your location only for them to be supremely let down by the experience on premise? You know,
Yeah.
so
They really have to, take the next step.
100%. And that's what digital signage and like touch points on premise can really do when done well. You have to think of it as a whole living ecosystem. Now, shifting gears a little bit, think about the DIY approach. We're talking about hidden costs. You know, think about the DIY approach. Who is doing the DIY portion of this? Who's taking on that additional risk and burden? It's a large task. Onboarding, training, developing, deploying, managing that living digital signage ecosystem. It's a big ask. Are you creating key personnel risks in doing this? You know, for this to be deployed effectively, either at a single location or at scale, for that person doing any DIY aspect of this, it requires a very deep understanding of that platform, process mastery, technical proficiency, flexibility, agility, time that not every single site manager has. Burnout and frustration and friction just by implementing a solution, thinking DIY is going to be easy. That personnel risk is a big one too. We have to take that into consideration. And content strategy, an overarching content strategy really includes developing scalable workflows and management plans to reduce the time investment of those internal teams, leaving them to do what they are best at.
Yeah, I think it's really important to, everyone take their role in their position. Some our customers, and say we're talking about retail, they've got to sell something. You've got to make it, put it up there and make it look good and really build out their tech and their environment. We're hoping that we're going to help build that story and really stay on brand. You mentioned one word that's super important to me is risk. When you do it yourself, you open yourselves up to all sorts of risk of being off brand. You mentioned color, font. Those things scare me when you let just anyone do it. It's what are they doing? They're in Word or they're in Google Sheets or they're maybe in Acrobat. Who knows? So it's very scary. So I think it's important. And then there's the hard truth. There's also a question, and I'm actually gonna pause and answer a question. The question was about measuring content performance. So that's actually what we're talking about right now. There's a lot of tech in the platform, in the CMS platform, from either audience measurement and conversion rates if we tie it into POS systems. So it's something we could definitely take a little bit further offline, but there is tech to measure. And then there's, some other ways to do it via, A/B testing and things like that, site testing. But you really got to tie into your sales and your performance to look at conversion rates. But lift and learn, with sensors, there's all sorts of things on the POS side if you're measuring that we'll get to. But I just wanted to answer that question before because it popped up and I was excited. So.
And it's a great call out. It's a big part of measuring and validating that ROI is getting that measurable piece at the end. So the hard truth really kind of identifying here, like what is unprofessional content actually achieving? It's lowering or degrading the customer perception of the brand, right? It's dropping that marketing ball at the goal line, losing those conversions, and it's invalidating the investment of digital signage, which are things we absolutely do not want at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
We come in, we specialize in on-site marketing and content strategy, helping customers identify the weak link in their game. That's what you do, right? You assess what you have, you assess what you're looking at, and you determine where is that weak link? Where can we improve? We develop those solutions to optimize implementations, to bring that game up a game every day, all day, every day. We measure those results. We were just talking about that. And then we start really seeing that ROI and can tie this back to the bottom line.
Absolutely. So and you said something made me think of a game show, but what are the weak links that, you've encountered as you're developing this kind of content?
Well, been in the game a long time, have seen everything, right? But when we're talking about the content strategy and how it touches all these different parts of the process, they really come down to the big things that we tend to see come down to three buckets. We have what we call the audience gap, the velocity gap, and the scalability gap. A lot of things fall into these three areas.
Okay, so let's peel that onion a little bit. So tell us about the audience gap. Why is that important?
Yeah, so this is a big one. This is a lot of where your typical content strategy might live. It's in what we're getting on screen and how we're connecting to audiences. This gap is where your content is not connecting with your audience in meaningful or impactful ways. And bridging this gap, it takes some work, but it takes understanding who your audience is. It takes that, creating that engagement by establishing trust and connection with your audience. They need to be able to rely on a consistent and helpful experience. Is this augmenting or improving their customer journey at that point in their journey? Is it relevant to them? They need to be able to rely on that and purpose, right? So content that clearly supports your defined audience goals for every single touch point.
Okay. I hear engagement all the time. Engage, engage, engage. What's that look like in the real world, in practical terms?
Yeah, so we already know that unprofessional content kills the effectiveness of any solution. But even beautiful on-brand content can fall flat if it lacks intention and purpose or isn't designed with the viewer's experience in mind. Again, relevant, augmenting their experience. To connect with an audience, the messaging needs to be relevant to them at that point in their customer journey. Their journey started before they even made it to the location. They entered, and now they're starting to experience your digital signage ecosystem and all your other on-site marketing services from the moment they walk in the door. How are those different touch points as they encounter them impacting their journey? How is it influencing their behavior? Serve up common audience needs to them on a silver platter, and you'll quickly establish trust and a meaningful connection with your audience.
It's very, very true. I mean, sometimes you got to spoon feed them.
Yeah.
Silver platter's nice. Sometimes I say spoon feed. So, you mentioned intent. The other thing, the other component, purpose. What about purpose?
Yeah, a lot of it comes back to purpose. Relevance and accessibility, they're key to establishing that initial connection with your audience, but now you need to capitalize on that connection, right? You want to influence a behavior. That's the conversion that we're trying to make. So just like the external marketing efforts, we're talking OTT, social media, again, all of those
Yeah.
ads may drive that traffic to your physical location. Your on-site marketing efforts are guiding that customer decision and influencing those desired behaviors on site. So this is especially true for any business looking to validate that cost of investment or show the ROI. You need to identify what that goal is, create that purpose, build your ecosystem to drive that purpose, measure to that purpose, to then validate and show that ROI. So establishing a clear touch point, a purpose for every single touch point. When I say touch point, I mean like there's a screen in this space that is the first thing they see when they enter. Its purpose is to welcome and drive them to the next engagement point, right? You're going to have different touch points potentially in a larger rollout, and they will all have a different purpose because they all exist at a different point in the customer journey. So for every touch
Yeah.
point, set measurable business goals that you want to achieve and create then a framework for effective content development.
Okay. Well, let's take a look at some real world examples. This one, I mean, before you even get into it, I look at it. It's a little bland, little weak sauce. So,
Yeah.
what did we do?
You're not wrong. So this is a before picture, right? We're going to do the after in a minute, but here's the before. Customer came to us, partner came to us really with an arena that has concessions, as an arena does, where concessions are. But what they were experiencing was they had screens above concession stands and within the stands that are for menus to, communicate to viewers and crowds what was in the stalls, drive some excitement, get them into the stalls, get them buying, get them eating the foods. But their content was falling flat. People were not able to read the signs. They couldn't understand them. They were in crowds. They couldn't see the burgers, fries, sausages above the heads of the people standing in front of them. The solution,
Yeah, this could be the fifth time I've looked at this, and now it's dawning on me that all I see is their brand. It doesn't tell me anything.
yes. And what's interesting is that's not their brand. It's just the word of the brand.
Just
So yeah, like they were having a difficult time getting, having that, creating that connection and then driving the behavior because people couldn't read it, right? Within their experience, within a large crowd of people, these screens are up high and at a distance. And they couldn't see the messaging. They were not getting, this was not clearly communicating, this is food, this is exciting, this is, you're hungry, come eat this. None of that was being communicated. It was, generic off brand. There was no connection with the brand that they were familiar with. Low impact. It wasn't attracting eyeballs. It wasn't communicating what it needed to communicate. There are words, small, narrow words that are crossing the little bezels. They're really
yeah,
hard to
we
read.
have furs,
Birds,
Dugs,
yes. And
Popco.
I don't
Yeah,
know about you, but I can't wait to have some hot doors later.
no. Well,
So
let's take a look and see what we did.
So we came back to them and we said, great, we love a header board. We love a video wall. We love driving people in to your concessions. So we developed a suite of solutions for different concession sites that, again, put that brand on display, generated excitement. We're big, we're bold, high contrast, easy to see for the viewers struggling in a crowd, trying to decide which stand do I want to go to. I want to go to the one that has a giant burger on it. I want a burger. make it easy for them, make it easy for them to make that decision. So we came back to them, brand compliant graphics. We're supporting this. We're creating a sense of who you are as a company, who you are as a business. This is instantly recognizable. Abundantly informative imagery, right? Easy decisions.
Yeah.
We're driving them to the line much quicker. They're able to make their purchases much quicker. And when they get there, the menu that they see is consistent with the content that drove them there. They know they're in the right place. They can make that connection between that burger and that line item immediately. Strong, consistent typography, high impact, all of these things, you know, anecdotally, this particular instance, there are lots of concessions here, and we for this rollout did a series of them, but maybe not all of them, right? I think there were a few left over that we didn't do for them, and they actually had some bigwigs touring the site, and they walked past one of these locations, and they're like, "Oh man, that's so good! This is amazing!" They went to the next stall, and they were like, it was one of the DIY solutions, and they were like, "Oh no, what happened?" Like, I don't want to buy that.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we helped them, develop more content for more of those to continue that exciting journey for their viewers and their consumers, and make it more consistent, and level up their game in their concessions of all places.
Yeah. And we chose this content because it's kind of lunchtime for half the country, and we want to make everybody, including myself, really hungry. I would be totally remiss if I didn't talk about the CMS integration on this. So you built the content, we're delivering it, and we're tied into their POS system. So with that, we've got accurate, consistent pricing. We're able to look at focused and content triggered around, we've done things around weather, we've done things around timing, we've done things around inventory and specials. So, hey, we got a lot of hot dogs, let's push on the hot dogs. Or, hey, we're out of hot dogs, let's push on the pretzels. So, we could see that. We've had customers, not just in the food and beverage, we've had customers in retail where they were triggering content on weather. We've seen things like wiper blades. We've seen as much as a 10% increase in conversion rates just on targeted content. So not to say that's the minimum or the maximum, but we've delivered that, and through partners such as yourself, that's the kind of story we can tell to our customers about good content and driving a solution for outcomes, not just the hardware. So David, I don't know if that's a question or really a comment from David West, but I agree with you, and it's a challenge. He asked, why do we always focus on, or why does the AV industry focus on the tech and not the content? I think that's why we're here. So we're going to keep going, but we can peel that onion back a little bit more. So there's more to talk about. We got to move. So one of the other ones is, you mentioned it before, the velocity gap. So what's a great example of dynamic, engaging content, and then what's this velocity gap mean?
Yeah, so this is one that a lot of folks miss, and it's a really, really big one. And a lot of what we're talking about is planning for your implementation, from content being soup to nuts, right? Like, it's the whole story. Velocity gap is those workflows and processes. It's something a creative agency like ours is designed to bridge. Developing the most efficient way to move mountains quickly, or even little hills, but come up with a solution to effectively, efficiently implement, from concept to deployment to measure to iteration, right? It's a life cycle of content, but it starts in the planning phases. Every solution presents unique challenges, and partnering with experts allows you to optimize your workflow to overcome those challenges, reducing the burden on site managers and marketing departments.
Yeah.
Like, rely on the experts. That's what they're here for, to really develop something using tools you may not know exist.
Yeah. So back to doing what we're good at.
Yeah,
We're all going to take our role and really lean in with those things.
absolutely. And because this is kind of an unusual topic, like, we're all familiar with, like, what content might look like. I think we've all seen content that's we have opinions about, but we're talking about workflows, and how does that really impact the solution? How does it impact the customer implementing the solution? Struggling with the velocity gap can look like a burnt out or frustrated employee whose whole job has suddenly become dealing with or making updates to signage playlists. It can look like, sites with grand visions that they turn around and they drop illegible PowerPoints onto their screens that were originally made for some other purpose, because they don't have the skill sets, the pipeline, the time, or the tools to optimize their messaging or their presentation for their audience and all their different touch points. Most often it looks like poor planning and lack of resources. The velocity gap creates lasting friction that erodes a business's faith in digital signage the quickest. We think about it the least, but it's a really big piece of the puzzle.
And I think it allows us, as Spectrio, to augment you as integrators, as partners. We can, and back to David's question or point is that, it's a forgotten or an afterthought when you talk about a new implementation or an upgrade or an update. We can help you with the platform, with the CMS, but really we can help you with that content and, really improve your look and your impression and your relationship with our mutual end customers. And they get a comprehensive solution out of that.
Absolutely. And from large rollouts to medium-sized rollouts to optimizing long-term planning or management and meeting the demands of maybe tight deadlines due to external constraints, because we all have them. Leaning on a partner that you can trust really takes the burden off of your shoulders, your customers' shoulders, and opens up a whole world of possibilities. When you rely on experts to say, "This is my target, how do I get there?" You're more likely to get there if you bring an expert into that conversation. We have designed both collaborative and independent workflows that empower users to streamline their efforts and bridge this velocity gap.
Yeah, very, very much so. We are able, especially in the CMS, to just kind of put some guardrails up around users, but also just it let's do what we do best, let them do what they need to do, and it takes a lot of that burden. I like that's a good word, the burden. We're taking it off their shoulders, but we're also kind of protecting us from them doing it themselves as well.
Absolutely.
So there I go. Yeah, there we go.
It's taking a second. So a case of, addressing a velocity gap. A partner came to us. They have a customer who's a national retailer of a thing, of known things, and they had developed. They'd spent a lot of marketing dollars on content, developing like I think a product video, right? They developed a lot of money to creating these high energy, super exciting, very interesting. But problem, I have thousands of dealers across the country, and every one of them has a unique audience to speak to. Every one of them, their goal is not just to remind them that this product exists, but to buy it here, right? And where I am, and come to me, and come here, drive traffic here. So they came to us and said, "Here's the deal. We have our customer, they have this need, and they've developed this creative, and it's, let's say, 5 to 10 videos. And we need to, in 5 business days, create versions of every one of these videos for however many of their different dealers sign up. And it could be 100, it could be 500, it could be 1,000." And we said, "Type, hold on." We came back to them and built a whole workflow that allows them to do this multiple times a year. They come to us and they submit information, they give us the creative, and in 5 business days, and in sometimes 1 business day, we turn around and give them those hundreds or thousands of videos back to them, because we were able to work together and collaborate up front on developing a solution for them that they can work in the long term, allowing all of those individual dealers across the country to get that beautiful, wonderful, perfect creative that is now localized for them and is driving traffic to their site with their URL on it or their phone number or their address and their logo on it. So it brings a lot of value to, our partner as the hero in this conversation and their customer as the hero to their dealers who now have amazing creative that will drive customers in to buy stuff. That's all they want.
Yeah. And these are often, completely white label solutions. Spectrio does this work built, and what you built is amazing because you're marrying or merging big data. Okay, maybe not big data. You're marrying data with branding and content, and you built a delivery vehicle for it
Mhm.
that really amplifies and expands what our partners can do as a service. You out here on the call, on the video, are able to offer this kind of service for your customers. So it's not even a case where we built the content, but we took this big multi-million dollar budgeted content, driving through the roads of California in the mountains, or hiking here through Colorado, or whatever it might be, and we just really touched it down to that end customer, touched it down to that locality. So I think that's really important message, or point here. We make you look good, and we can do it at an arm's length, or we can do it right next to you.
Absolutely.
So let's see. I think there's one more gap we haven't talked about, and it's so scalability. I see this, and I know the partners see this, especially on a deployment level. But they're focused on the physical deployment, or often we're hyper focused on the physical deployment. Getting product there, getting techs on site, having the exact same experience. But and then we're good at it, or partners are good at it in a region or national. But I've even seen national partners struggle across branch to branch to branch. So we're good. What are some of the struggles you've seen?
Yeah, scalability, I think we see this. I think we all immediately probably have some level of PTSD with scalability. We've all been there. But one of the biggest challenges that we've seen from mid-market to big enterprises and large networks is scaling. You know, you are, let's imagine you've developed your perfect program for, it's one site, it's packaged, it's everything you want it to be, but now you're deploying it to hundreds of sites and you're relying on site managers, local contacts at each of those sites to faithfully keep your program intact. They need to localize it. They need to put their hours in, they need to put their messaging and their specials up, but they need to do it within your guardrails. And, I can imagine I know I know I've seen it. I can imagine you've seen it where that goes off the rails very quickly. A site manager may have a different approach or a different feeling about how this should be done, or, maybe they have a nephew who loves GIFs and puts too many of them on the screen, or it's happened. Um,
Yeah.
or we've
So
got
it's the
yeah,
same thing that we do, and we see often in the platform. And I'll push this forward. We do it in the platform, and we put guardrails up of who can change what. But it's
exactly.
just as important in the content, or if not more important in the content that we maintain across, and just like those guardrails. They seem like kind of the key in protecting your brand and delivering outcomes.
Yeah, and beyond that too, it's a peace of mind, right? Because if you don't have those constraints from essentially centrally controlled, campaign here, if you don't have those constraints, then you don't have that consistency from site to site. You don't have confidence that your message is reaching or being said the way that it needs to be said. You've crafted this with strategy and research and planning, but when you push it, is it going to have the same hit? Is it going to hit the same when it gets to every single site? If every single site can change it. Now, what you can do, is to leverage the experts in the technology, in the system, in the CMS, in the ecosystem that you are building. Leverage the experts to say, what are the limitations and capabilities of this technology to allow me to put up those guardrails, set those parameters, control and lock what I need to control and lock, but at the same time, and this is the goal, you know, to give those site managers the perception and feeling of being empowered to get their message across as well when they need to advertise something special at the store, when they need to have their messaging communicated, they need to have that feeling of empowerment while being able to operate within the ecosystem that you've designed so that it doesn't break. And you need to have that peace of mind so that you are not now running ragged, fixing everything for everybody all the time. you want that confidence.
Yeah, it really protects you from uh, noise and subterfuge, just craziness. So
Yeah.
this was one of the other examples.
Yeah, so we had this exact problem. We've seen it many times, but today we're talking about one that was an international hospitality chain. They came to us with, think of international hospitality chain. They have sites everywhere. There's lots of things at a local level that they need to communicate that are different from what, corporate might be able to communicate for them, right? There are local events. There are hotspots that they want to highlight. There's all kinds of things they want to drive customers to, with their local relationships and their local partnerships. But at the same time, they were having and struggling with maintaining their brand consistency across all of this because they had site managers, operators at each of these locations who were making their own things in PowerPoint, making their own things in Word and loading them onto these screens, and it was damaging their brand, and they were lacking that consistency. So, what we were able to do with them was to say, let's take a step back. This is something that we would normally do in the planning stages because this is one of those content strategy pieces is how are we going to scale this? So we took a step back. We identified the difference between the centralized needs, the localized needs, and we worked with them to develop a series of basically templates that utilize the technology. So they didn't have to come to us every time they needed to make a change, and they didn't have to build
Mhm.
something from scratch every time somebody needed something. We would build a series of templates that are both layouts and content pieces that would allow them to lock down everything that was brand compliant, needed to be a certain particular way, but was opened up enough to allow flexibility for all the site managers to use messaging for their hours, to communicate specials and events, to communicate hotspots and stuff like that. So it really gave them the playbook for every single site that they had, every new site that they would onboard. Easy peasy, give them the playbook. They're this brand, give them this playbook. They've got it. They're ready to go. Made life a
So
whole lot easier.
just like we do with the CMS, you're able to do with the content. You can give them the guardrails, but you give them choice, you give them flexibility, all on brand. You got to remember in hospitality, sometimes they're not quite franchises, but there's ownership groups, large hospitality ownership groups, and they own multiple flags. They might own a Hilton, a Wyndham, and Marriott. So helping them stay on brand versus just doing it themselves is really important to those top level brands to make sure that they're delivering brands. So really, really great example there. So, we covered on the three, kind of pitfalls there, but or focus areas. I've honed or hammered in, signage. It's not the box, it's not the screen. There is so much focus on it. And, really, the proof is in the pudding. We have to focus on the experience and the outcomes, and that's really driven by content.
Yeah. And again, content is not just what you see on the screen. It's everything that goes into planning for that experience and that engagement from long before it ever gets published to long after it's been seen and we've measured and we've iterated on it. When done well, content and content strategy, it's an expertly crafted experience that augments the audience's customer journey and engages them on a meaningful level. When expertly executed, it complements users' roles and resources without adding undue stress or burden. And when scaled with intention and proper planning, it maintains integrity, faithfully serving its intended purpose at all touch points and is consistent across all locations while offering the right amount of localized flexibility.
Absolutely. So, we put this up there, and I think I should have put quotes on there. Digital signage, it's not a box, it's an experience. I'm going to own that. I'm going to put that out there. I'll put it out in the world, and I'm claiming that one. But I think that, to sum it up, or we're getting there, we're setting up users for success. We're setting up your customers for success because at the end of the day, they have to deliver something. Our partnership, our content. I love the word you use, the two words, intent and purpose. So I think those are really, really important.
Absolutely. And, setting customers up for success, not just success we installed, but long-term success where they can continue to see and reap the benefits of that solution. It means developing a content partnership that encompasses that purpose, that practical management and effectiveness at scale.
Very cool. So I'm going to regret this probably. This is my email. I kind of learned this one from my buddy old Peter LaRock, but I just fell short of putting my cell phone on there. But this is my email, not an email box, not a form. I mean, yeah, there's a form on there. Olivia would be very upset if I didn't mention that. So yes, go fill out the form. Put in your questions. Again, there's more comments. Thank you, David. But I think that please reach out to us, engage with us. It's not one size fits all. This is complex. We understand that. But right now it's time. Let's talk about it. I think we're here to listen. I am certainly here. I can dish the ball. So rather than just subjecting Shannon to putting her email up there, I will reach out, or not reach out. I'll listen and talk to all of you at any time. This is really important. But I think I'd open it up now for questions, and really appreciate you guys sticking this out. We probably went a little longer than I had planned, but yeah, I like to talk. But here we go. We got some questions. Let's see. More complex distribution diversity, more steps. Is this a business case requirement management deliver conceptual transaction? I think that, there are, to David's question, I'm going to just sum this up. Are these really conceptual or are there concrete results? There's different mechanisms where we can measure specific results, especially in places like retail, food and beverage, and anywhere where there is something to sell. If you're talking about in hospitality, maybe you are talking about conversions to, if they're selling timeshares or something like that. But audience engagement, if they're attending the luau down by the pool, I think you have to set yourself up with things to measure. And I think we would help do that. The question, I don't know, Shannon, if you could see this, what kind of content services do we offer? And part of that is, what do we see as being the highest engagement?
Yeah, man, when it comes to content services, we run the gamut, to be honest. We do offer assessment services, content strategy solutions. We also develop content for, of course, digital signage solutions, everything you could possibly think of in the world of digital signage, from menus to passive like waiting experiences to video walls to interactive solutions. We do everything. We also do other on-premise creative services for overhead music and messaging, and of course on hold as well. You name it, we probably do it. But then outside of that as well, we, as an extension of a marketing customers marketing team, we also can provide and do provide out of site marketing services. So advertisements for broadcast, for streaming both audio or visual, right? We have both options. As well as, product launches, website. We've done Kickstarters. We've done everything. You name it, we do it. Cause
full on digital out of home, retail media network work. So we'll work with ad providers bidding for ads in space. So, we could talk about revenue generation, revenue sharing. One of the questions, explain more about different content triggering. So that's really back to our CMS side. We use sensors, either accelerometers or BTLE. We've used this in a lot of sports. Imagine you pick up a shoe at a display, and you then have content from that based on the accelerometer or the BTLE sensor. I'm getting a little geeky. You could talk about, I pick up candles or scents that have, particular, that drives content. Then there's also our audience measurement analytics, both in radar and camera. So radar, we're just going to see people with, proximity and linger times, where we might do specific content. There's an attraction, and then there's a presentation. And then with camera analytics, we can talk about gender and age, or some other guidelines where we really deliver bespoke content. We're going to show some of that at NRF in January, which is some really, really cool solutions. And then we can also do things, we talked about food. We can pull in weather feeds. The CMS, we have a lot of different apps in the CMS. So when it's cold out, you're selling hot chocolate, and you build barriers between just temperature. It's below 50. I'm selling hot chocolate. It's above 80 or 60. Depends on where you're from. 60 in Minnesota is warm today, but maybe I'm selling lemonade or iced tea. So, we drive a lot of that into POS systems, especially in food and beverage. But that also goes into, retail clothing. I'm going to be talking about parkas. I'm going to talk about gloves. If it's raining, I'm going to talk about umbrellas or windshield wipers. So we drive content based on third-party inputs directly into the CMS. So I think that there's a lot of room for, now I'm beating the word, but a lot of room to help our customers drive outcomes and
Yeah.
measurable outcomes. I think everything has to be measured. And if you can't measure it, it didn't have, I always say if it's not in Salesforce, it doesn't exist. But if you can't measure it, ROI is just vaporware. So I think that we have to enable you to deliver on ROI for the CMO, and that's branding and guardrails and protection of his brand or brand, and the CFO, and that is delivering results. So, that's my soapbox moment for results. I don't see any other questions. So that means I either did a good job or everyone's really hungry from that first example we showed.
I know I am.
Yes, me too. Going once, going twice. Any more questions? Bueller? Bueller?
Well, all right. Shannon, Peter, thank you. And I'd like to thank all of our attendees so much for joining us on today's webinar. The Unprofessional Look, Why DIY Content is Weak, is the weak link. This recording will be available on AVIXA's website. That's avixa.org/webinars within about 5 to 7 business days. And your half of renewal unit will be applied to your transcripts within those 7 days. If you have any questions, please refer to our webinar team. We're at webinars@avixa.org. And an important side note for the CTS holders among you, if you registered for this presentation with an email address other than what we have on file for you, you won't get credit for attending. We can correct that, however. Please email membership@avixa.org and let your account manager know that when you registered, you used the wrong email address, and we'll get it corrected for you on the back end. And I need to take the time out to thank our sponsor today, Spectrio. And again, a huge thank you to Shannon and Pete for helping us to understand the hidden cost of how unprofessional looking do-it-yourself content weakens your brand impact and potentially reduces the return of your hardware investments. Be sure to continue the conversation at Connections Made today by joining the AVIXA Exchange. It's an AV provider directory and a year-round community where you can grow your network and stay updated on industry trends. We hope you've enjoyed our presentation. Thank everyone again, and make it a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.